Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the r/Kollywood podcast, and this is episode number 19. Today we are going to be exploring Karthik Subbaraj's filmography, and because the retro trailer just dropped, we're going to be exploring our thoughts on that as well. On the podcast today, I'm joined with Siege Bro, Dart Bro, and JK Bro. Hi guys.
Hey Hari,
Hey everyone, good to be
Hello,
back.
everyone. Indeed, it's good to be back.
So, retro the trailer just dropped. What do you guys think?
I mean, honestly, for me, the last 24 hours of my life has been really, really good. I think Retro Podcast came out approximately 24 hours ago, and
Yeah.
what I did not expect, right after the Retro trailer, Retro's jukebox was released, and
Yeah, that was
Yeah, that was a treat.
That was,
That was a
um,
treat. Yeah.
that was a cherry on top, I'd say.
Kandipa.
and since then I've been losing my fucking mind.
Good plug, good plug.
Interestingly, right, I was among the first people to comment on the post in the Kohli subreddit, and I said something which I got a lot of likes for it, but also a lot of big brickbats. And I think this is I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. I find, going by the trailer, right, this seems to be Karthik Subbaraj's most eccentric film. And I use that word very
I'd agree.
carefully, right?
I
Right?
can see that.
And this is saying something, considering he has a lot of out there films in his filmography. In fact, I'd go to the extent of saying, barring to some extent Petta, pretty much every film of his is really, really unique in its own way. But this seems very eccentric. Of course, that makes me super hyped, but also a bit anxious because with that kind of a tonal shift, right, or tonal mix, right, you got to get the balance perfectly right. And personally, I trust Karthik to deliver. So I'm more hyped than anxious, but this trailer was really something.
I put this
I like-
post. I made this post yesterday on. I woke up yesterday morning, and the first thing I saw was Jingichama released, and then I saw Retro's trailer was cut by Alfonso Putran.
Yeah,
Yeah.
correct.
That was
Yeah, I was
one
gonna
of the
say that as well.
first things I saw, and yeah, it has been an amazing 24 hours. நீங்க eccentric னு சொல்லி you said, Siege, you are a little worried, right? I
Yeah.
can understand that, but what I learned about myself, I loved Good Bad Ugly. I loved it so much that I've been wanting badly to go back to the theaters, but unfortunately I'm in a place where they don't have good show times. I really want to be back in the theater for
Yeah.
that. But when Karthik
Yeah.
Subbaraj is going full cannon out, like going loose, I am there. I am there. Like I want to see what
Kandipa.
is going on. Like I'm really excited about this.
First day theaterல நான் கண்டிப்பா இருப்பேன்ற மாதிரி ஒரு
Yeah.
this level of madnessலாம் it's an experience for sure. ஆமா.
Also, you don't know, you can't make out what the plot is all about, right? And you don't know what is the.
It's a well cut
what is
trailer
the-
that way. Yeah.
It's very well
Yeah,
cut
no,
trailer
it's
that way.
it's
Yeah.
a very well cut trailer.
And in a way, not misleading, right? If you consider another analogy, right? Dragon's trailer, the trailer cut was very misleading. I don't think Retro's trailer cut is very misleading. I think it's exactly what the film will be, and you go watch
It's
it.
love laughter
because it's-
war, but in a different light, basically. Like not the
Exactly.
way maybe we think of it. It might subvert some things, but it is love laughter war.
Yeah.
So
Also, like to add on to what
lost my mind when he said Sirappana Tharam. I have been waiting to hear that.
and
in
the
a Karthik
framing of
Subbaraj
that
film
shot.
for a long time.
and the
Yeah.
framing of the shot is just something else. I swear.
And the silhouette and the just the hairstyle, man, that was like
Yeah,
next
yeah.
level. Like you can
like,
clearly see what the homage is, and yet it's
Johnny.
like it works perfectly.
a lot
Yeah,
of
Amazing.
a
for
lot
sure.
of people said the overlap of the voices, like the editing technique for the sounds in the trailer. A lot of people, and the ஒரே dialogue சொல்றாங்க, they didn't like it, but that gave me an extra boost in the trailer. Honestly, I'm like, what are you guys doing? How can this be so wacky?
Yeah, true.
You see a lot of Alphonseisms in the trailer, like that bike shot is very similar to a shot of Nivin Pauly in Premam, where Surya is coming on the bike and like Nivin Pauly அதே மாதிரி ஒரு turn அடிப்பான், அதே மாதிரி ஒரு vintage bikeல. Yeah, you see a lot of that.
So now I think let's have a little look into Karthik Subbaraj and his influence in Tamil cinema. So let's kind of relate that to the films that you guys chose as well. Let's start with, I don't know, Dart Pro. What film from Karthik Subbaraj or filmography did you choose?
So yeah, the movie that I want to choose is, so Siege, you are talking about eccentricity and all that, right? I would say
Yeah.
outside of this retro trailer which we have seen, easily Jagamethandhiram is his most eccentric character that he has made till now. And every time you see Surli, right? Like usually when people are going to kill someone, என்ன சொல்லுவாங்க, like I'm going to fucking kill you, அந்த மாதிரி தான் சொல்லுவாங்க. சுருளி என்ன தெரியுமா சொல்லிட்டு போறான், இது வரந்த ராசா அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு போறான். Like when he goes to kill Peter
ஆமா.
with such a soft, like Surli has like a really soft heart, but at the same time outside he's just like some crazy psycho only. Like when I'm noticing, right, Karthik's almost every kind of character is a loose cannon. Like he can do whatever he wants to whenever he wants to. I feel all of Karthik Subraj's characters have been, and in that I think Surli even tops that list for me.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I still remember that scene as well. He opens the door and he looks at that guy and he goes, "The Varanda Rasa." Yeah, I completely. I think it's the most outblown character that he's ever written. In the Mari character we've never seen in his filmography, and I think that's why it was kind of mixedly received when it came out. Yeah.
I think if you consider Surli among his characters in his gangster series, right? So Jigarthanda, Double X, to some extent Mahaan as well, right? The
Yeah.
core gangster in all these films, they have a lot of gravitas. Surli does not. Like
True.
Surli is just Surli, right? He's like a borderline comedy actor, but he is kind of not pretending, but almost feels like he's play acting, being a gangster. Where I think probably, and this is where I feel like Jagamethandhiram Vande, it was a precursor to his better films that came later on, with Mahaan and Double X, right? I think Karthik kind of had this great character, but he kind of struggled to balance the
Yeah.
tonalities between the character, the world, and a more sort of serious plot. And this also kind of is the reason why I'm a little nervous for retro, because again, I don't want to say we burnt our fingers with Jagamethandhiram, but to some extent it didn't live up to the expectations that it had, right, when it came up. But why I'm more optimistic is because we've seen Karthik as a filmmaker also grow. And the way he's kind of incorporated those eccentricities, maybe pulled back a bit in both Mahaan and Double X, right? I have a feeling that it has given him enough baseline and confidence to kind of really go out with retro and make it work. And the other thing, right, if you take retro's trailer, Surya is still quite serious. I mean, he's still quite grounded in a lot of scenes. It's just a few things here and there where you can see some eccentricity to him, but that is not too far out like Surli as well. So I think Jagamethandhiram, great character, probably required a bit more of a balance, in my opinion.
On Jagame, I actually remember feeling the same way that Siege Bro said about, that this character has a lot of promise, but like the world he finds himself in doesn't seem conducive to who he is as a thing. So, and as a result, his eventual journey through the movie doesn't feel as rewarding as it does in like other Karthik Subbaraj movies. Very memorable scenes, like, and obviously Surli as a character itself is very iconic. Sana's score is also very memorable. But like, unlike other Kasu films, I tend to feel that, I mean, this still needed some time in the oven and Ramari, like both in terms of plot progression and things like that, and is it? But yeah, it's still not a bad film by any means. It's still a very enjoyable watch.
Nice. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, Siege bro and JK bro. Yeah, I think the world he's put in is kind of like JK bro said, it feels kind of too much in contrast to what his character arc or type is, and I wasn't really a fan of maybe the international setting also contributed too much to what it felt like that this could have happened anywhere, and it didn't necessarily have to happen in, I don't know, a big London setting like that, or it could have just happened in Madurai itself, and I don't know.
So to be honest, right, I've been realizing something recently for the last few years, that I love comedy movies. Basically, any movie which has comedy in it is one of my most rewatched movies. Usually, like Jailer recently. Okay, so அப்படி பார்க்குறப்போ I feel Karthik Subbaraj's movies are basically a comedy of some sense. Be it Jigarthanda or that is one of the reasons for me Jagamethandhiram works a lot, because I find it hilarious. Like almost every character in
I have a like I think very good point that bro, but I feel like his comedy is works so well because of the writing principle that comedy at its core is you create a contrast, a polar opposite of contrast. You put two polar opposite people, lock them in a room, and then watch the comedy happen in Ramayana. So
exactly.
like in a lot of Kasu movies, like இப்போ ஒரு அசால்ட் சேதுவோட ஒரு வேர்ல்டும் அந்த டைரக்டரோட அந்த ஒரு வேர்ல்டும் கிளாஷ் ஆகும்போது the comedy just happens. You just write as you go because the comedy will just bring itself to the fore because the premise itself is so rich with gold as a gold mine of comedy. So like yeah, that's why I think it works so well. But like very well said. And even he got the good comedic side out of Rajini and all. Like Petta at the time, like I mean back then like Apo Rajini was going into was in a different groove la, like around the time of Petta and all coming out. And then he brought out the more light-hearted side konjam like with this Kambali Siddhar and all that. Yeah, Petta Velan is such a refreshing character also in terms of the comedic weight that he brings to that plot.
Nice. Okay, let's move on. JK bro, நீங்க என்ன படம் choose பண்ணீங்க?
I chose Jigarthanda because I remember watching that movie in the theater, like when it came out, and I was like, wow, like, I mean, how have you seamlessly molded so many aspects and woven such a compelling storyline at every turn? Because, like, in some ways, it's a meta movie also. You feel like he's telling you his own story, like the main character's name is literally Karthik, so there's that aspect. There's the world of Madurai, there's the world of filmmaking, and it just all comes together so well. And considering that this is just a sophomore project, like a second film, I mean, like, it's just masterfully woven together. And there's not a single moment in that movie where you feel like, yeah, I mean, this is a laggy portion or this is something that I tend to skip during rewatches. அந்த மாதிரி ஃபீலே ஆகாது. I mean, Assault Sedu is an entire different dissertation as why how to write a compelling anti-hero character, which at the time in Tamil cinema we were not getting a lot of. Bear in mind this was 2014, where Tamil cinema was slowly coming out of that phase of relying on comedy tracks as a crutch to push movies and all that. So 2014 was also the year of Aranmane and all. So like I mean it was kind of in a flux state where it was like, okay, where is the way forward for the industry? And then bam, like in comes Jigarthanda and breathes fresh air into the whole industry and shows, okay, you can make gangster movies like this also that even family audience வருவாங்க, like they'll also come and see. It'll appeal to the youth also. Everyone will take something away, and it's also a thematically rich movie. It's not just your average popcorn movie. Like when he says, like when he sits with that Parni, that Pottikada Parni guy in the just before the climax block and says, உங்களை பொறுத்த வரையிலும் நான் வந்து வாழ்க்கையில தோத்தவனா இருக்கலாம், ஆனா என்ன பொறுத்த like that is such a simple but powerful dialogue. Yeah, it's not even like I say what a brilliant dialogue, but it works. It's a simple but such a powerful dialogue. I mean, I mean, it's a movie that kind of inspires. It gives something for every kind of cinegoer also. Like if you like compelling twists and turns in your thrillers, அதுவும் இருக்கும். If you want to see a compelling story arc and character arc, அதுவும் இருக்கும். Especially in the way like Karthik's and Assault Sedu's character arcs just do a crisscross and they end up at each other's starting point. It all comes full circle. And even the movie within a movie aspects work so well because typically those are very difficult to pull off because you have to still hold the audience's attention. It's just a very well packaged and well structured movie, and it really showed the world what Karthik Subbaraj can do with like a proper budget.
Interestingly, right? So Jigarthanda vande, it was remade in multiple languages, remade in Kannada, it was remade in Telugu and also in Hindi. And if you watch those versions, right, and you watch Karthik's version, it clearly proves the power of filmmaking over a plot. So what do I mean by that? Right? நீங்க என்ன வேணா ஒரு plot எடுத்துக்கலாம், but அதை வந்து ஒரு screenplay எழுதி, the way you kind of shoot it and the way you kind of weave in, the technicalities of, filmmaking, which we'll talk about in some time, it completely changes the final output.
Like இப்போ நீங்க சொல்ற மாதிரி, like you say, like இப்போ just replicating the plot alone is not enough, because the
Exactly.
screenplay is how those flat characters on paper as a plot come to life as living, breathing characters. And the screenplay should be such that the characters are driving the plot and plot is not driving the characters.
Yeah.
So it's in the small nuances of treatment, because that's how you get engaged in the story. So like that's why most of these remakes didn't work. I don't think even a single one of them did, because they couldn't replicate it.
What we are talking about, right? When you watch Jigarthanda, the last 5 minutes when Santosh Narayan starts playing Jigar in the background, and in the actual movie at that time, like the characters meet again, right? At the end of the
Yeah,
movie,
yeah,
and
yeah.
he forgives
In the car, in the yeah, in the
and,
car.
and he's
As in the
forgiven by
Erangiyur.
Karthik is forgiven by
Hmm.
Sethu at that second. And from that
Yeah.
next shot we see is Sethu is acting in a movie, and Karthik is going and becoming, like, asking Vijay Sethu's dates and kind of becoming gangster. This is where the swap happened.
Against.
And in the swap,
Yeah.
background Santosh Narayan will start playing Jigar.
Jigar.
And
Yeah. What a track.
that track doesn't have a language. Okay, like anybody who can listen to it,
It's gibberish. Yes, gibberish.
it is. Jigar is basically, it clutches your heart so much. It kind of gives you a peace and a calm, almost like you are forgiven of all your sins in your life. I mean, that is how strong I feel about Jigar. And that starts playing, and அந்த இடத்துல they'll written and directed by Karthik Subbaraj, the title card வரும். I mean, what else can you expect from cinema more than those 2 minutes that you want? Like, this is why we go to movie theaters, for exactly this 1 second.
Yeah. And it even got a similar treatment. Even JDX has this kind of similar treatment in its climax block, which I like to see. But we'll get into that,
No, I
going
think
forward.
I think this is a good. No. Actually, I think this is a good place to talk about that. So I am talking about a moment I had in my life where I felt so alive. Okay, when I was listening to Jigar the first time in my movie theater. How dare a movie director do that to me for a second time, and amplifying the emotions I had like 10 years back and just doubling it up? And he's like, fuck that, have this, take it again, and just elevating it more. So the only person who could have remade Jigarthanda is Karthik Subbaraj himself, and he did it twice. I mean, what a genius.
Yeah.
What a genius.
The way it's shown in JDX is also just pure genius, which is just it's very difficult to top. Ninga sonna madri, it's very difficult to top an already high Jigarthanda's ending, few scenes, but like somehow JDX came very close, I have to say.
No, like now நம்ம பேசிட்டு இருந்தோம்ல, like the soul of the movie, the soul of the movie, Karthik Subbaraj has it in his heart. Like, he's the only person who can ever make a Jigarthanda ever again.
Yeah, that's true. Because he is the one who is, organically interacting with the subject matter and bringing it to life on screen, like rather than just trying to adapt it. So yeah, it just shows, like Seesbro sonna madri, it reflects in the way the film is made.
Last time I visited Jigarthanda was like a year back, so I don't remember the film exactly like to a T, but I first time I was watching the film, I remember being absolutely kind of just it's like I was expecting this movie to go in a very different turn on my first impression, my first watch. When that turn finally came up, that the genre shift, I mean, it's just completely kind of catches you out of character, and I just love that, because you expect this to be a very different movie than what it is, and when you discover that it's going in a very different direction, it's still not very disappointing then, but you're kind of more curious to see what this guy does, or where this guy ends up with the movie that he makes with Salt Sedu. And I like how they gave us a very kind of, it's an ending that we are satisfied with, and it's an ending that makes sense for
Also,
Sedu's character.
real quick, Before we move to the next movie, I just wanted to shout this out for Jigarthanda in the sense that
Go for it.
thank you, Karthik Subbaraj, for including a love track that actually matters to the storyline because back
Ama.
then in 2014, that was not the norm at all.
True.
Like still
Ama.
used to have love tracks just because movies need love tracks in Radhikaga. But thank
Ama.
you, please. Thank you so much. It was so refreshing at the time to see something
Ama.
like that.
Every,
I can't thank him enough.
yeah. My last one point on Jigarthanda. I was
Uh,
very lucky to be able to. So now first day Jigarthanda theatre la Chennai la paathuட்டு when I came out of my movie theatre, I went first day first show because I was a Sana fan already. I came out of my theatre and you will not believe it, Karthik Subbaraj was standing right there, and I was able to shake his hands and tell him he had done a great movie. I was able to thank Karthik
oh
Subbaraj
my God.
in his
Bro,
face.
that's crazy, bro.
That's
Yeah.
crazy,
Jealous,
man.
bro.
I know. I
Yeah,
consider
bro.
myself very lucky. Like you remember like Jigarthanda scene la வந்து Siddharth will be standing outside the movie theater waiting for like with that anxiety.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
actually saw that guy. I actually saw that guy who was so anxious,
Yeah.
and I was at least able to tell him a little bit that he did an amazing job.
Okay,
Yeah.
moving on to the next movie, Seats, bro. What did you have for us?
So the film that I wanted to kind of bring to the table is one which I think in many ways is Karthik's most matured film. It's the one film that the theme kept me awake literally for many days on end. And in some ways, it's also one of the biggest missed opportunities in the last few years. I mean that in a good way. I'll come to that in a second. And that's Mahaan. So I think Mahaan Vandila, it's a very interesting moment in Karthik's filmography. If you take, say, we talked about Jagamethandhiram, right? We talked about how the tonal clash between having an eccentric character like Surli and a more serious plot around him kind of didn't gel for many people. And
Mm,
before Jagamethandhiram Vande, you had Jigarthanda, where at its core there is no seriousness to it. It's a very character based journey, and it's a very eccentric character based journey for both Siddharth and Bobby, right?
Yeah.
And if you go to his earlier films like Pizza, Mercury, I think those are films that rely more on the deceit of the screenplay, if you will, right? It isn't
Yep.
trying to make a major point on anything about the world or philosophy or whatever. I think
Hmm.
Mahan Vande like kind of shows you Karthik where he is in his life and how
That's
he
true.
has evolved, right? He took
mm,
a very very interesting idea that ஒரு particular philosophy வச்சு நம்ம if you live in your life, what happens if you push it to the extremes and what are the repercussions of it, and the choice that he made of going for lack of a better word, prohibition, and the way he pushed it to the level and showed a strong philosophical clash between a father and son and made a very very engaging drama with a truly great acting performance by Vikram. I think that
Hmm.
to me was what made Mahan like a really really great film to watch, and the way he kind of ends the film, that I thought was just chef's kiss in my opinion, right?
That's true.
I talked about it being a big missed opportunity. I so wish this film had released in the cinema. I know because of COVID it couldn't make it to the theaters,
Hmm.
but இந்த படம் வந்து if it would have come to the cinemas, விக்ரமோட career வந்து எங்கேயோ போயிருந்திருக்கும். Because think about it, right? He would have had a Mahan, followed straight by PS1, PS2, followed by Veera Suran. That would have been his filmography over the last few years, more or less.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so Mahan, right? In Mahan, until then, Karthik Subraj characters, we most of the time do not know why they became. We don't know why Surli is the way Surli is. We don't know why Assault Sedu was the way Assault Sedu was, which we might get in triplex for all I know. Um, but in Mahan, what they do, they first show us why Gandhi Mahan becomes the liquor entrepreneur that he becomes, right. So they show this entire journey and show how loose he has become, how free he is. Like he's free to do
Yeah.
whatever he wants. என்ன வேணாலும் பண்ணலாம். Okay, and we are totally immersed in a story. And in this time, there is somebody who is like, this is the time where he's coming, like Mahaan is coming in a bike at his peak. Mahaan is at his peak. He's coming in a bike, and the guy behind has his Vesham and the Patkai, they'll be driving.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that Surya Atom's song starts, and Vikram is going
Michael.
crazy, and there is another character who just seems to be even stronger than this guy, and they both meet, and this is an intermission block, and Sana Pinadi on the papa.
It was
I am like, my
It's a next
why
level,
I
is
thought
it,
the
bro?
movie
it
this
was
way.
next level. You're describing, like, I literally have goosebumps right now. I'm just visualizing it in my mind. That was truly
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
That interval
Why?
It
block.
would have been a
When-
blast
when-
in the theater,
Uh,
for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
The impressive part about Karthik Subbaraj, right? Lot of movie directors after this they fall off. So what happens in Mahaan right after this intermission block? நம்மளுக்கு Mahaan, we know why Mahaan became Mahaan, like how he became that, how free he is, how much of a loose cannon he is. And here on the other side, we have a character who has only one purpose in his life, to basically destroy this empire, destroy the freedom of this guy who has this freedom. Like you're putting like two, like ரெண்டு பேர் whose ideologies are so strong, like so fucking strong, and you're making them clash against each other. And like that is why I like the Missing Me song so much. Like in 5 minutes, Karthik Subbaraj basically tells why Dhruv Vikram is what he is, you know. Basically,
Yeah.
I'm sold, right?
It's like a Joker parallel. La. Some people just want to watch the world burn in Ramari. Like this guy can't be
Come on.
bought, bullied. He's just so driven in his singular goal, and that's what makes it so compelling.
He's literally a
So,
force
yeah.
of nature in that sense.
Literally, he's like the weight of his past sins come to haunt him.
Yeah.
there. And it's
Exactly.
portrayed very willingly. But like Dart Bro said, I mean, and also like how Siege Bro touched upon at the start, Mahanla vandu, what I instantly noticed as the story progressed is that Matta Karthik Subbaraj படத்துலலாம் பாத்தீங்கன்னா, like the driving force, the themes that drive the plot usually begin and end with the characters themselves. Like there is no greater goal beyond that. இப்போ ஒரு கார்த்திக்னு ஒரு ஜிகர்தண்டால ஒரு டைரக்டர் இருக்கான்னா, he makes a gangster movie because he wants, that is his big ticket to success. Sedu is just chasing more, power and this thing. So that literally begins and ends with them. But then Mahan, like maybe it's like Siege Bro Sonamari, maybe it's Karthik Subbaraj maturing as a filmmaker. It's about far more. It's about an ideology that is far bigger than a single Gandhi Mahan, or even the Gandhi himself. Like it's about, misinterpreting the ideal of freedom and expression, and how both sides of that spectrum are toxic in their own ways. And yeah, and that is a very, it's his coming of age project in Ramari enakku thonichu. Like, okay, I'm now ready to tackle on these kind of themes also in my work. But at all that said and done, he still didn't lose his flair, his signature flair,
Yeah.
in creating a very compelling central conflict without becoming too much of a sellout in trying to package those themes, those overarching themes and all. So I thought that was ரொம்ப refreshing ஆனிச்சு. And another thing is that all the characters felt, it's, I mean, more than the characters no சொல்ல போனா, like I felt he staged the conflict in such a way that you can't pick either side without feeling some conflict within yourself also, because you see why these characters are the way they are. Like, I mean, that's what makes it so this thing, and the emotions hit so much harder because of that.
Even though they show kind of Mahan winning towards the end, right? At least in that small battle that they were having, but Karthik Subbaraj in his own movie shows that, like, Mahan character is சொல்லுவான். When what is his name, Mercury hero வருவானே, அந்த ஹீரோ பேர் என்ன?
Rocky. In the movie, his name is Rocky.
Yeah, so Rocky will tell
Rakesh
Mahan,
Christopher.
உங்கள மாதிரி இருக்கணும், கெத்தா இருக்கீங்க, தனியா கெத்தா இருக்கீங்க. And Mahan will be like கடைசில இந்த தனியா
கடிக்க ஆரம்பிச்சிரும், அதுவுமே கடிக்க ஆரம்பிச்சிரும்.
So he's not really a winner at the end of the movie either, and the character accepts that.
It's a Pyrrhic victory, like I won, but at what cost ன்ற மாதிரி ஒரு இதுதான். I was apprehensive of like இது எப்படி முடிப்பான். Like I mean, okay, like the conflict has escalated to this point. Like there is no coming back from this. There is no redemption for either character. So how is he gonna believably tie up this storyline into a convincing not new Pata? Then I never saw. Okay, this is like the best possible route that would have satisfied everyone under மாதிரி இருக்கிறப்போ. Yeah, it was a very mature, take that okay, இந்த மாதிரி கதை இந்த மாதிரி தான் போய் முடியும்
Yeah,
அப்படின்ற மாதிரி ஒரு
honestly,
rooted and real
when
take.
you were talking about this, right? Like in the last two sentences, Karthik Subbaraj, I don't really thinks what is a climax people would like. He thinks about what is a climax which will apply for these two characters at this point. That is how he
what
writes his
realistically would. I mean, Mahaan for me, I personally now I've only seen it like twice, and Mahaan out of Karthik Subbaraj's filmography, it didn't work that much for me. I think it's because when since I've seen his like other films compared to like Petta or Jigarthanda, Mahaan I think is less fun and more like this kind of like a cerebral kind of a watch. And it's not necessarily a flaw or anything. But I think it did make the film feel like it was like, caught between this kind of stylish, being a stylish gangster kind of epic and this slow burning kind of ideological drama. It's because I think it's Karthik Subbaraj being his most like introspective uh, he can be. That's why it probably felt different out of his filmography, but it felt different for me. It felt weird kind of watching Karthik Subbaraj do this kind of a movie. When if you've seen his other movies, so எனக்கு அவ்வளோ work ஆகல, but yeah, it was a weird watch for me out of his filmography.
it almost feels like every character in every Karthik Subbaraj movies has a little bit of him in in,
ஆமா.
in the character. Like every character
Yeah.
has a little bit of that.
Okay, so moving on to the next movie. நான் வந்து actually Petta choose பண்ணேன். So reason why I chose Petta is because I think it's looking at Karthik Subbaraj's filmography. It's where his indies kind of sensibility kind of meets that mass appeal spectacle. Um, and I think well, when he exploded onto the scene with Pizza 2012, he showing audiences you didn't need like superstar names or mega budgets to make a gripping thriller. He kind of single-handedly kind of broadened the Tamil audience or that appetite for this genre hybrid kind of melding horror with crime, meta humor with sincere drama. By the time Peter released, I remember actually watching this first day first show in the theater. Subbaraj, I think, wasn't just an indie kind of filmmaker. He'd become this kind of like a bridge between parallel and commercial Tamil cinema. I think when you look at Pete or a screenplay, you see all of Subbaraj's instincts kind of just layered all throughout, like a layered non-linear structure that like teases information like a crazy flashback that I thought was the best part of the movie that kind of reframes our sympathy and dialogue. It balances quirk with kind of like this gravitas. Kali or a character arc reintroduced as like this mild-mannered warden, then revealed as kind of like that vengeful hero in the interval is just classic Subbaraj. I think he loves withholding, then denoting reveals, which I feel like is one of his best quirks as the director, and I just love that in each and one of his films. Even the supporting cast, Petela, from the hostel students, Simran, the Munish Kant or a character, they feel like they're a larger part of the puzzle. Each kind of beat is kind of calibrated to the echo of the Pete's like central themes of like loss and revenge, and his characterizations often kind of I feel like they hinge on ordinary details. How Kali like kind of like um okay, I remember this one key scene where Simran she asks Kali saying, you've never அந்த இளமை திரும்பதே song போதுதான் வரும். She goes நீங்க வந்து family பத்தி பேசவே இல்லை, and then he just kind of immediately switches from that playful kind of tone
Yep.
to And I even remember what Anirudh does with the score. It switches from this kind of like playful riff
Hmm.
to the Kollywood team le என்னமோ போகும். I think it's one of the best parts of the film where he just manages to switches with such ease, and it's amazing how and this he
Also,
does it.
real quick, speaking of iconic moments, I'm glad that this is the movie that gave us Rajini's equivalent of Geta Modra moment in that funeral scene.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
That is such an amazing fan-worthy moment, I swear. அப்படியே கண்ணு முன்னாடி வந்து நிக்கும். You can just see the scene play out in front of you. It's so iconic. It's literally a GIF. Like even if you search for it now on WhatsApp, you'll find that GIF of Rajini vibing to the funeral beat in Petta
I'll be
and
honest.
pointing towards
Like
the gate.
Rajni as the hostel warden for me. Rajni felt like the least Karthik Subbaraj character that he has done till now. Okay. I was like, Karthik
Yeah.
Subbaraj is such a big Rajni fan, but why? I mean, I can understand all the commercialized like production aspects which come into it.
I mean,
But
yeah.
but when this flashback happens and
Petta was GBU before GBU, bro, basically.
and we get that scene, we get this scene, and at least I was like happy that at least in one scene I got to see Karthik Subbaraj's character, like Rajni showing up as a Karthik Subbaraj character.
There's also plenty of comedy, la. Like, I mean, he is a mass hero, but like when he goes to the house of that Bobby Simha's father's character and all, like Adakalam narrate, and then he comes back in tea cancels. Hey, glass. Nalla padikada. It's so natural. Like he just effortlessly sells that scene. I think this was the last movie in recent times that did Rajini actual action believably without it seeming very, underhanded and stuff. And Rajini is doing this. Like on the Nunchuck fight,
True.
it still felt believable,
True.
which is still an achievement.
In my mind, Petta is basically what would Basha be if Karthik Subbaraj had directed it. If you view the film from that lens, right,
True.
I think it brilliantly meshes the classic Basha trope or the classic Rajini masala film trope post Basha with mild and really balanced seasoning of Karthik Subbaraj's own sort of uniqueness. Petta Velan, the character, he at the end of the day is still a very anti-heroish type character, and that kind of comes to the forefront with the big revelation in the end, right? And the way he kind of revels in that joy of screwing this guy over. See, onnu vande you kind of take advantage of the situation to do something righteous, but then Petta vande he doesn't just do that, he revels in that situation in some ways that you never see Rajini kind of. First of all, and then in most recent films, right, Rajini will never really go against the accepted quote-unquote moral code to do something wrong. But even if he does that, he will not necessarily revel in it. For example, in Jailer Madri. In this film, right, he actually revels in it, and it makes for really entertaining cinema as well. Right? And I think
That's
Karthik,
true.
one day, he found that balance perfectly.
Do you think Anirudh was more of a production decision, or was it more of a decision that Sana had just made 2 movies for Rajnikant with Ranjit, and so both of Karthik Subbaraj and Sana consciously decided
That's a very good
maybe it's
point.
not a good like let's not collaborate for this one.
Also, was it more of a Sun Pictures thing because he was their golden goose at that point?
Exactly. So
Even
that's
still
what,
is.
like what do you think? Like it could be this or that, right? It could be a little bit of both also.
See, if you listen to Rajini's speech in Petta's audio launch, right, it really feels like he did not have any influence in bringing Anirudh, because he himself was like really like surprised when he learned that Anirudh would be scoring for this film. So it seems like it was a decision driven by production, which Karthik also kind of went along with, and Rajini was just happy to, of course, have him on board. Again, this is just me reading between the lines, but I think it's more to do with the production than any of the principal players.
Yeah, probably.
And to be fair, he delivered a really good soundtrack. And again, it was probably the most uncharacteristic soundtrack in a Karthik Subbaraj film to a large extent, but the songs are still they still hold up to this day. And they still hold up better than some of Ani's more recent works as well. Karthik, when they being such a big Rajini fan, he brought all those 90s தலைவர் film elements. And yes, it's the most uncharacteristic Karthik Subbaraj film, but I can't imagine how else a Rajni film directed by Karthik Subbaraj would have been. And in that sense, I think it worked perfectly. If you take Ranjit's film, for example, right, there was always this sort of tonal clash between what Ranjit stands for, what he's trying to do in his films versus what Rajni and Rajni's fans want. And it clashed big time, right? And that never really worked.
Yep.
You take Veteran as well.
Yeah.
It was probably a slightly better outcome in the end, but even there you had this constant tussle between TJ Nanavin trying
Rajini
to
the
tell
actor
his
and
story,
Rajini the
and
star.
then
Yeah.
exactly. But I think the one good thing that Karthik did was he did not take some serious issue and try to package a Rajni film around it. He made a very simple, entertaining film, putting Rajni at the center of it and Rajniisms around it, right? And literally, the trailer ends with "Get Rajnified." I mean, that's the whole point of the film. It is a very meta movie at the end of the day, right? At the same time, it had the uniqueness that Karthik Subbaraj brings in. For example, the visuals and the church fight opening the way, just the color grading is just so Karthik Subbaraj. And the interval fight when Rajni sits in front of that the gate that shot of him sitting there and the bonfire and the way his shadow is framed and stuff, right? That's the kind of things you can clearly say, hey, this is a frame from a Karthik Subbaraj film, right? And to me, that's why the perfect balance between Karthik and what a Rajni film needs is Petta, and I think that's the reason why it worked really well, at least for me.
Yeah, I mean, I still find it a little. See, Karthik Subaraj in Jigarthanda படத்துல, when they'll be in the வெளில உட்காந்து பேசிட்டு இருக்கப்போ they'll be like இந்த படத்துக்கு யார் ஹீரோ போடலாம், கமல் போடலாம், ரஜினி போடலாம், and Karthik will be like, ஆமா என்ன அந்த தெரு பக்கம் கூட விட மாட்டாங்க அப்படின்னு சொல்லுவார், like about Rajni. But end of the day he got a chance to make a movie with Rajni, but I'm just sad that he gave up to Rajni than bring Rajni into his movie. He went into a Rajni movie, so that is the only reason Petta doesn't stand very high for me.
Those are our favorite movies from Karthik Subbaraj filmography. Next, we'll be delving into a slightly different topic. That is, we'll be going into Karthik Subbaraj is more his screenplay and kind of filmmaking technique.
So yeah, talking about technical aspects of Kasu, like I mean, first and foremost, it's just the way he's able to tie together all the technical aspects of cinema and filmmaking to create a convincing vision for visual storytelling. And that is a very underrated skill in today's cinema. Like I mean, of course, you can put in the money to bring in production quality, அதெல்லாம் பண்ணலாம், but as you can probably see, we've had Radhesham, we've had things like Kalki also, but nobody does it quite like Karthik Subbaraj because he's very crystal clear on what he wants his visual output to look like. இப்போ ஜிகர்தண்டால எடுத்துக்கிட்டா கூட, if you see the way each shot is staged, like especially during that, not mistaken, this is the interval block where they get made by the gang, the Madurai gang, that these guys have come for this only and the Madri, and then the big reveal is given to Sethu that idan. The way everything is staged, like okay, itana mala peide, and yeah, those are all subtle decisions that probably go behind the scenes. And I think I remember hearing recently retro interview lo kuda that even Karthik Subbaraj has said this, that script la irukradhum what you see on screen will usually be very different with me because I figure out the shot, the nuance of the shot in the moment. Like anga ninnada எனக்கு தெரிய வரும் அப்படின்ற மாதிரி. And one more aspect I really like in his filmmaking is that how lived in he makes his worlds feel. This might not be a technical aspect per se, but like in terms of the screenplay, like I mean, you can get some filmmakers get so caught up in just making the screenplay move that we don't really have anything to anchor ourselves to in this world. Like you put again coming back to Jigarthanda, like if you see there's so many aspects like இப்போ அந்த மதுரையில இருக்கிற லைஃபா இருக்கட்டும் where he teaches them that அந்த குரு சோமசுந்தரம் செக்ஷன்ல வந்துட்டு where he's like மதுரையில 199 கடையில பரோட்டாவும் மட்டன் சுக்காவும் டக்கரா இருக்கும்ன்றது வந்து இன்னொன்னு வந்து and even in the slight quippy dialogues also ஒரு பொண்ணு போகும்போது உனக்கு இளையராஜா பாட்டு கேட்டது இல்லையா நான் சங்கர் கணேஷ் ரசிகன் அப்படி that is such a throwaway line but it just cues in so well to how this assault Sedu character is wired, right?
Just adding on what
Mm-hmm.
you're saying, I feel what
Mm-hmm.
Karthik Subraj does really well is he takes us to the core of where he is in not just with the characters psychology, also in the visual form of the place that we are going to be, like his framing, and every single thing object which is in the frame transports whoever is watching it into exactly that place, like how you were explaining Jigardanda, right? Like I have never
Mm.
felt being more in Madurai than when I see Jigarthanda.
Yeah,
Same
yeah.
with London.
And
I haven't been to London, but even though I've seen so many English movies, I like when I watch Jagamethandhiram, I can see how a Tamilian would feel in London.
exactly, yeah, yeah. Exactly. And even, coming to, Siege Bros example, right, of Mahan, like if you see, I mean, there's the big thing where he decides to, start with his Adidadi in his life, and then, the Bobby Simha character says, and the Devadutan Rani, like he prays to Christ, and then literally this guy comes as a savior. That crucifix motif is there visually present so many more scenes. Like it's very subtle in some scenes. Like in that scene where he's debating whether to go after what's this guy's name, Satyavan or Jnanam, you see there are three tube lights, around the head of his character, and they start flickering. And those three tube lights are staged like the top part of a crucifix.
அதுல
When he
APR
murders
bro.
Satyavan, and even when he decides to murder Satyavan, like he's standing at the middle, there are a bunch of dead bodies sprawled out right behind him, almost in single file. Satyavan's character is also, in front of him, spread eagled. And that also, on the aerial shot, வந்துமே கூட ஒரு crucifix மாதிரி தான் இருக்கும். So, like, it's such a dark spin. Like, I mean, the very character that this guy prayed to and thought of as a savior is now being, the very instrument of his death in Ramari. And it's just very subtle. Like, I mean, some would say that, okay, this is all stuff that 95% of people won't even care about for this kind of like level of visual detailing. But it's nice to know that it's there. Like, I mean, it just adds so much more rootedness and believability to his stories. And the consistency, the visual consistency that he carries out across his movies.
So when I am going into to watch a Karthik Subraj movie, I almost feel like I am that kid in the 90s who was very young, and I'm just going into a movie theater to see like majestic frames, because that is the only place where I can totally see what is happening outside of my current world. And I almost feel Karthik Subraj was right there in the movie theater with me in the 90s, and took it entirely inside him, and he's like spreading it out right now in 2010s and 2020s with the similar, with whatever emotions he took from back then. And for that reason I feel he found a very good blend of how movies are perceived today, but at the same time he has the heart of how Tamil cinema always was. uh, like one strong character right in the middle, who, like, see, that is something like Indian cinema, or mostly Tamil cinema in the 90s always used to do. It always had a central character who was always very strong. They know what they want, they'll always fight for it, hook or crook, okay, but they'll get it at the end of it. Karthik Subraj took all this, and every movie he makes, basically he's trying to still use those characters, but in majestic frames, like, of course, like Tarantino. If I have to take an example, எனக்கு ஜெகமேதந்திரம்ல எனக்கு பிடிச்ச part, like all three characters will have one huge title card coming up before the characters are introduced, like stuff like that. When Karthik Subraj makes it, like, of course you guys would agree, Mahaan was a movie which was made for the theater. His movies look something like that. It's made to be seen in a huge screen, with all the details that are supposed to be consumed, right?
To what you just said, Dart Bro, right, about his films being made for consuming on the big screen, right? I think he's one of those few filmmakers, right? Modern day filmmakers who has a lot of those panoramic shots in his film. I don't think many younger filmmakers, right, they do that anymore. And what is so nice about Karthik's films, right, is you have this level of world building and detailing and whatnot, but at its core, these are very personal, intimate character stories. And to me, the juxtaposition between the larger world and this sort of smaller element, not smaller, but like space wise smaller element, I think that balance is just so perfect. It's amazing, right? Like if, for example, if you think about it, like JK touched upon it, like Gandhi Mahan's story is a very, it's his personal journey, but the world that he inhabits in is huge, right? And you see that, but that larger world never distracts you from that personal journey that he's undergoing, right? It's everything that he brings in his filmmaking, right, is in the service of that character's arc and that character's journey from point A to point.
You're talking about the big panoramic views that Karthik Suraj uses, right? I think you have a point there. Like Karthik movies are larger than life. Like the grandeur is always visible on the screen,
Yeah.
and somebody who complements that really well with the for the grandeur is Santosh Narayan. I think Karthik
Yes.
Subraj and Santosh Narayan use a lot of drum beats in their movies just to show how grand this entire event is.
And because he's heavily like Karthik, right? He's heavily influenced by spaghetti westerns and so on, right? So you using that as a baseline and working with Sana to bring that Sergio Leone style of music, right, also elevates that grandness or scale. I don't know how many of you guys watched the old spaghetti western films with Clint Eastwood, right? Like for me, when I watched Jigarthanda Double X, right, like I grew up watching those Clint Eastwood films because my father was a big Clint Eastwood fan. அந்த டைம்ல வந்து எங்க வீட்ல வந்து he when DVDs first started becoming a thing, right? And my dad used to travel a lot, so he used to bring back like all the old James Bond films, all the old Clint Eastwood films. And even though the Clint Eastwood films were already 30 years old, 40 years old at that time, I'm talking about like early 2000s, right? They came out in the 60s, like 70s, I would say. Just the visual scale of those films, watching on a like a 25-inch CRT TV was something else, right? And what Karthik provides in today's world is that level of grandeur. The other thing, right, like we all know that he's heavily influenced by Quentin Tarantino, right? But particularly the later films of Quentin Tarantino, the likes of Inglorious and
Hateful Eight.
Django and so on. And but at the same time, it never feels like he's copying it. It doesn't feel like a pastiche, right? It feels like he's bringing his own sensibility into it. So like முன்னாடி சொன்ன மாதிரி, like Petta is a film. It's a this is how I would imagine a Karthik Subbaraj directed Rajni film would look like. But if I were to extend this analogy to a broader spectrum, right? Let's say if Quentin Tarantino wrote a screenplay and gave it to Karthik Subbaraj, what would that film look like, right? And this is exactly what you see in the likes of, say, Jigarthanda Double X, Gandhi Mahan also, sorry, Mahaan to a large extent as well. And to me, he's like tapping into the masters, but at the same time being something unique about himself, right? And that to me is so good, because a lot of young filmmakers, they lean in hard on some of these well-known directors. For example, I'll take the extreme case of this. Like, what's the guy who made Dhruvangal Padinaru? I forget his name. Karthik Narayan, right?
Yeah.
Karthik Narayan, yeah.
Yeah. So he's a
Karthik Narayan.
self-confessed, like self-professed Nolan fan, right? And then he did the most pretentious film possible in that Project Agni and that Navarasa or whatever it was, right? And because he was trying to imitate a Nolan film, Karthik is not imitating a Tarantino film, and that is what makes a director stand out. You can be influenced by your masters, but don't imitate them.
One of my favorite things about Karthik Subbaraj is his kind of ability to kind of have a lot of subtext within dialogues. And what I mean by that is he kind of say say for example in a typical mass film, dialogue is often direct and punchy, but Karthik Subbaraj he takes that, he adds layers to even those moments. I mean, take the climax in Petta, for example. Um, he doesn't Rajni doesn't necessarily over explain himself. He just stares into the camera, and I think that's the power of subtext. It respects the audience and it lets you connect the dots rather than having to over explain everything. And I think he uses dialogue to just define power dynamics between characters, often maybe with one person appearing calm while the subtext is just pure threat. There's a lot of these examples in Petta, even Mahaan for that matter. And I think his dialogue writing is just a major strength that doesn't get talked about enough, because on the surface his dialogues just may seem casual or stylish, but they're doing a lot beneath, from foreshadowing to revealing character psychology. Just and his use of subtext, I think the unspoken meaning behind the line is just a key tool in how he builds complexity into scenes. That's one of my favorite parts of a Karthik Subbaraj film. The dialogue is just so strong. Okay, let's move on to the next segment. Let's look at Karthik Subbaraj's influence in Tamil cinema and a genre that you would like to see him explore. I don't know. Let's JK bro, நீங்க ஆரம்பிங்க.
Yes.
Okay. He obviously he's proven time and time again that, the gangster genre and like the whole, anti-hero thing is his strong suit. But
ஆமா.
I definitely think he has potential to explore something like, I don't know, I don't want to say a romantic drama, full-on romantic drama, but like something that definitely leans into more of that angle. I don't know how retro will go, because like love is the first word in Love After War. And, based on what we've seen of, Pari and Rukmini's dynamic in that film, it does seem like it'll be a very central thing. So yeah, I definitely like to see, because the characters he writes are very compelling, right? And characters are the most important part of any romantic drama. So maybe definitely I'd like to see him explore more of that genre.
எனக்கு வந்து I kind of want to see Karthik Suraj do a sci-fi movie. I don't know why, but I feel like his quirkiness and his style of filmmaking would be so interesting to see blended with the sci-fi genre. And I don't know, even some, it could be as little as something like an Ayalan, maybe just something on the same level as Ayalan, where we see
I would have
alien.
loved to see, on that note, I would love to see Karthik Subraj try something like a Mahavir.
Oh,
Yeah, even
Something like
some
that would
alien.
definitely be
oh
interesting.
my God.
Dad bro is like, oh my god,
Oh
that
my
would be heaven.
God.
Dies from cinema gasm.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I got put it better. I can't put it better. I would like to see something like a walk water cutting from Karthik Subraj, and that kind of movie where I know he is capable of doing whatever he wants to, and since his style of comedy also might work, I want him to feel a little stagnated with time and make a movie within a like ஒரு நாள்ல நடக்கிற கதை ஒரு வாரத்துல நடக்கிற கதை. I just want him to be cramped a little bit, but at the same time be expressive about all that. I would really like to see something like that.
It's such a great example, walk water cutting. I
That
actually
is
would have
true. Yeah,
never
yeah.
thought of it. ஆமா.
We need more movies like that in Tamil cinema, if I'm being very
Yeah,
honest.
I
yeah,
know,
true.
man.
It's been a while.
I wish there were.
More of Sudukavam also would be so much fun. I'd love for a movie like that to come out again.
Siege bro, நீங்க?
இப்போ நான் சொன்னேன்னா கொஞ்சம் பேராசன்னு சொல்வீங்க, பட் I'll say it nonetheless, right? I
Yeah,
want
bro.
Karthik Subbaraj to move to Hollywood and make a movie adaptation of the game Red Dead Redemption 2. He is
Oh my
perfect
God.
for that.
Bro,
Oh my
this was
God.
not on my bingo card. Holy shit, man.
It's funny that you
Bro,
say that,
that
because I heard that Maniratnam is doing the exact same thing with
In
Thug
Thug
Life.
Life, right? Yeah, yeah.
ஆமா.
yeah,
But
but it is one of the best gaming stories ever told.
ஆமா.
Like,
exactly.
I mean,
Yeah,
at
no,
least in
that's
recent
true.
memory.
So
So
cool
yeah,
to
But
see.
But even if, let's say, he doesn't get to do a Hollywood version of it, right? Like, even if he just takes the core of it and sets it in Madurai or something, it
Pandya
would be an
Western movie,
absolute.
basically. Oh,
Yeah, exactly. அந்த மாதிரி பண்ணா கூட இல்ல, it would be absolutely brilliant. Imagine Arthur Morgan's journey with Karthik Subbaraj's visuals, man. That would be something.
That
I
would be
mean,
next
it would
level,
be
man.
totally something.
with Santosh
With
Narayan's
Santosh
music
Nair,
also.
Exactly.
Oh,
And a very quirky supporting cast as well, right? Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that to me, match made in heaven. Rockstar,
Yeah, bro.
make it
It's
work.
very, even while playing it, I was like, yeah, this would kill as an adaptation with like our style of musicals
Yeah,
and
yeah,
all.
yeah. In
Yeah,
fact,
it's very
if
evocative.
he really wants to be bold about it, right? Like, see, India la vandu, we have had a decent history of making sort of these spaghetti western pastiches, right? I mean, of late, of course, it's become more of a parody mari with Irumbuka. And then what is that? This guy's name, man. Simbu Devan's film. I forget its name now.
Irupakottai
Before he
Mohan.
made Puli.
Irumbukotai Murattu Singham,
Yeah,
Iron
yeah,
Fort
yeah.
Ferocious Flame.
Yeah, so something like that, right? Like, I think we made film, or Quick Gun
Yeah,
Virgin for that matter. So it's become more of a
yeah.
comedy nowadays. But during
um,
Jayashankar's time, right, they actually played it very serious, right? So you can totally. There is, I think, an audience who would be interested in watching pseudo spaghetti western set in India or with an Indian milieu. If Karthik does it, I think it could really work. And what better story but than sort of Arthur Morgan story? It would be
Definitely.
absolutely
Mm,
brilliant,
for
right?
sure.
I don't know,
for
get
sure.
someone, get like Vikram into it, man. I know he's a little older than what Arthur is in the
Arthur is
game.
ideally, but like,
That's
yeah,
okay, but
But
he
it would
would
our
kill
totally
getup
it.
work.
mathu irukku, avala vada.
He would
Amma.
completely work with him.
He would kill it.
With
Or
him, it
if
would
you
definitely.
yeah, if you don't get
Mm.
Vikram for Arthur, right, let him make Vikram Dutch, man. I think he would be totally perfect for
That
that
is
role.
a good, yeah, that is a good show.
Yeah, that is a good show.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah, for
my
sure.
wish for Karthik Subbaraj film.
okay,
Mm.
let's move on to our final segment, guys. Let's talk about Karthik Subbaraj and his influence in Tamil cinema.
So I think Parthiban Vande, like, he was part of a film companion roundtable once. I think this is going back probably pre-COVID or just about during COVID. And he said something interesting. There was a question: what has been the most influential? And this was hosted by Baddy back then, and he was still with Film Companion, right? So the question was, what has been the most influential trend in the last 10 years? And he said, Karthik Subbaraj and the rise of this new wave of directors. I think we have these new age directors and Karthik, Nelson, Lokesh, and a few others who I'm blanking on right now. But and a few others from, like, Nalan, for example, came from that Nala Airconer batch as well. The Kadal Sotapati director, he doesn't do much nowadays, but I forget his name, Balaji
Balaji
Mohan.
Mohan, Balaji Mohan.
Balaji Mohan. I think he had some successes as well in the comedy genre. But Karthik was the one who kind of redefined what it means to be a filmmaker, making films for the mainstream. And in his initial works, he redefined what could work in the mainstream as well. And with the likes of Pizza, for example, and nobody expected it to be
Mm.
from monster hit, and we got Vijay Sethupathi because of that as well, to a large extent, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
post that, I think the fact is he makes films for the big screen, but he makes films that are not compromising on, or not getting
Also,
compromised due to the business interests.
எனக்கு பாத்தீங்கன்னா, and I think it's kind of tragic that none of us discussed this movie in his filmography, Iravi, that, whoever, like, if movies like that kind of cement Karthik Subbaraj as, the rise of a filmmaker who people are willing to sit up and listen to these days, like across all audiences. Like, he is part of that new gen of filmmakers that has somehow, the entirety of Tamil cinema audience in his, wrapped around his thumb, for lack of a better word. So, in terms of balancing what the audience's pulse is and what they want to see, and telling compelling stories with, engaging worlds and characters and all that. I think no one does that balance quite like he does in today's day and age. And I really think, I could go on and on about this and that would become a separate pod, but like I feel like he's one of those directors who's very proudly leading the charge into taking Tamil cinema to the global stage. I mean, he's one of the finest resources we have in that thing. And yeah, I can't wait to see what he does next.
I think one of the big reasons Karthik Subbaraj he stands out in Tamil cinema is because he blurred that line, like Siege Bro was saying, between indie and mainstream in a way that I didn't really think was happening before. Obviously, when he came in with Pizza, it was like this small time budget horror film with like fresh faces that we've never seen before. The writing and technical finesse were, I think, on a different level, and suddenly it was okay to tell genre stories without a big star, and people showed up for it. I think that alone shifted the way that producers and audiences looked at new filmmakers like him. Um, and then um, and then he followed with Jigarthanda, which obviously wasn't about which wasn't just about filmmaking. It was meta, and Iravi. It kind of he dove into this kind of gender dynamics again without spoon feeding the audience. But what really cemented his influence for me was Petta, because here you have Rajnikant, a massive, like, larger than life figure, and Subbaraj is directing him in that's very much a fan tribute, but also still his film. He brings in kind of like non-linear storytelling, reveals the character through motives, and just gives side characters weight as well. All the things he was doing in his earlier films, but scaled up for this kind of like a mass audience. I think Peter showed that you can make big star-driven commercial films and still try to stay true to your storytelling style. And that's opened the door for a lot of young filmmakers today. I think with Nelson, with Jailer, and a lot of bunch of other people as well, willing to take more risks and experiment with genre, subvert structure, and just because someone like Subbaraj already did it and made it work. I think looking ahead, I think his biggest impact will be the confidence that he's given to a whole generation of Tamil directors, that you don't have to compromise your voice to go big. I think he's proven that intelligent layered stories can be accessible, and that even with mainstream cinema you can be bold, quirky, emotional, and still entertaining. So yeah, whether he's working on with newcomers or megastars, I think Karthik Subbaraj has kind of redefined what Tamil cinema can be. And honestly, I think his influence is just only going to grow. So I'm really excited for Retro and whatever he does after that.
Yeah, like talking about his influence, right? I think Karthik has a meta reference to himself. Like Jagaran of a scene, like, basically when he meets the producer,
Mahaan.
he asks for a violent movie, and towards the end, இதுதான் நான் கேட்ட ரத்தம் தெறிக்க தெறிக்க ஒரு action படமான்னு சொல்லிட்டு he gets uploaded for making something different. It was basically a meta reference to himself, what he is, and that is basically the entry point for him into Tamil cinema. And we have all just wrapped him so tightly, and we love this space, and I just hope he continues being in the space along with Santosh Narayanan, who I really wish doesn't move completely to independent music. I'm so scared, but yeah,
Keep saying that. I really hope.
I mean, it's fine as long as I get his music one way or the other. I'm not going to
bro,
complain.
think
I
about
mean,
it.
I'm going
Like,
to miss
think
him in
about it.
films.
We are gonna lose an aspect of Karthik Subraj movies
Um,
just because of that.
That's
exactly.
there, but like, yeah. I
No,
mean, I
no,
think he'll still
no.
do some movies here and there for Karthik Subraj,
Yeah,
but like,
please.
maybe.
பயமா இருக்கு bro.
Yeah.
பயமா.
Bro. I'll miss it, but like, it's if the alternative is he never makes music again, I'll gladly take indie music. Yeah.
On this note, I'm gonna go and listen to
Some
the retro jukebox right after.
again. Um,
Those those were our favorite movies from Karthik Subrajoda filmography and our thoughts on the recently released retro trailer. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and do subscribe and tune back for another episode on the r/Reddit Kollywood podcast. Thank you guys.